Hello, 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 and welcome to Nursing News You Can Use Live at 5. I'm Tina Baxter, your host. Thanks for tuning in today. This is Wednesday, September the 10th, 2025. Woohoo! We're in September, y'all. We're getting close to that season where fall, I love fall. Fall is one of my favorite seasons. I like summer and I like fall. Not so much of a big fan of winter, but I love summer and I love fall. And that means it's pumpkin spice season. So I get my pumpkin spice muffin that I love. So I get excited. And then after that, it comes to my peppermint mocha season. So as you know, I'm a big proponent of drinking coffee. I love my coffee. So let's go ahead and get into today's news. But before we do that, let's get to our affirmation for today. Again, from the You Are a Badass calendar for 2025 by Jen Sincero. And today's affirmation is trusting your intuition regardless of what anyone else thinks and doing what it says about as authentic and self-loving as it gets. I'm going to say that again. Trusting your intuition regardless of what anyone else thinks and doing what it says is about as authentic and self-loving as it gets. And I always want you to come from that authentic place of love in order for you to have a great time in the rest of your week. All right, so let's get into it for this hump day. Our first news story coming up. We're going back to, guess what? Surprise, surprise. Operation Nightingale, another more fallout from that. And we're going to get into this. So this is coming from out of Connecticut. And it says another CT nurse suspended over connection to nurse national fake diploma scheme, officials say. So it says the Connecticut Board of Examiners for Nursing last week suspended another nurse that State Department of Public Health officials said was connected to a national fake diploma scheme. The board agreed to suspend the nursing license of Victoria Awuso after a DPH investigation revealed she had obtained her nursing degree from one of several Florida for-profit schools now under federal indictment for allegedly issuing fraudulent diplomas. Owasu was not at the meeting on September the 3rd when a DPH attorney told the board that her application to receive a Connecticut nursing license said she attended MedLife Institute in Naples, Florida. Owasu never had an address listed in Florida, and the school was not credentialed or accredited to provide online instruction, according to DPH staff. Julian Katua? I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Without obtaining the proper requirements for a degree in nursing, Awusu is a clear and immediate danger to the public of health and safety, a statement charges by the DPH. A hearing will be held at a later date to address the allegations, staff said. That's from CT Insider. And again, this is another one of those cases where it's been popping up across the country. Nurses that are not nurses, but individuals who are pretending to be nurses, getting fake diplomas, and now going out. And we're going to hear a lot today about fraud. So just buckle your seats here, this is again unfortunate that I feel like some of these people were targeted because maybe they had a nursing license in another country or they had training in another country, came here and they bought a fake diploma. I don't know, but there's been a lot of repercussions from this. So it says Awusu is one of dozens of nurses who hold Connecticut licenses who have had their licenses suspended, voluntarily surrendered their licenses, or had their license revoked due to their connection to the diploma scheme. The state nursing board was given the names of 172 individuals who may have been involved in the fraud, said Brittany Schaefer, a spokesperson for DPH. As of August 29th, the board had issued discipline in 72 of the cases, she said. Another 17 were awaiting adjudication, and there were 43 ongoing investigations. In 40 of the cases, further investigation was not warranted, and they had been closed. The school in Naples and several others are under federal scrutiny following Operation Nightingale, a massive 2022. By the way, it's 2025. This is in 2022 when all this came out. So, gosh, I've been covering this case for a while. Investigation looking at nursing degree fraud that spanned several states, including Connecticut, and led to more than 7,600 people receiving degrees and, in some cases, nursing credentials based on fraudulent documents. Through the alleged scheme, recruiters were paid to seek potential students, promising them a nursing degree for a fee, federal court papers said. In most cases, the schools, which were for profit entities not connected to colleges and universities, did not require or offer the required number of clinical and classroom work to receive a degree in nursing. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, which conducted the investigation with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the alleged fake degrees allowed people to take the National Council Licensure Examination, known as the NCLEX, for registered nurses, federal authorities said. There were no incidents that indicated that the people passed the test through fraudulent means, a spokesperson said. Many of them were able to pass the examination without the proper number of clinical and classroom hours because they previously worked as licensed practical nurses. Based on the results of the test, people were able to obtain licenses by fraudulent documents, including diplomas and transcripts that indicated they had completed the requirements to work as a nurse. The Connecticut board was notified about the investigation by the National Council of State Boards of Nursing in November of 2022, and since has been working to identify people who obtained Connecticut nursing licenses by submitting the fraudulent degrees. The State Nursing Board also has dealt with 72 cases of Connecticut licenses obtained fraudulently, DPH officials said. In each of these cases that potentially could have led to discipline, the nurses were offered a hearing as part of due process in front of the board before their license was revoked. Many voluntarily have relinquished their license prior to any discipline imposed, DPH records show. Until a nurse is flagged by the DPH as having participated in the scheme, they have been working in the state of Connecticut and other states as nurses. At least 3 of the defendants currently charged in the national scheme have been required to pay more than $7 million in restitution, money they received for recruiting or accepting students to their schools to illegally obtain a nursing diploma and fake transcripts, federal sentencing documents said. According to the Associated Press, students collectively may have paid upward to $114 million for fake degrees from 2016 to 2021. So that's a brief recap for that story. Unfortunately, I think we're going to see a lot of fallout because of this as we go on, and this brings us to what's happening down in Florida. So I wanted to share this because I think that what this new law that get proposed in Florida, because these fake schools were down in Florida, I think this is one of the reasons why this new law has gone into effect in Florida. So I wanted to share this with you. And it says, this is from the Tallahassee Democrat, new background screening law aims to make nursing healthcare safer. During a short break and a busy emergency room shift, the hot topic among nurses was the new background screening law in Florida. The legislation, also known as House Bill 975, which took effect on July 1st, requires healthcare professionals regulated by the Florida Department of Health, with very few exceptions, to be fingerprinted as part of both initial licensure and under the new DOH guidelines at the renewal date of existing licenses. So Florida Department of Law Enforcement Level 2 checks will now be done by FDLE-approved live scan service providers on most everyone working a healthcare job. The Level 2 check reveals out-of-state offenses in addition to in-state offenses. The ER nurses, notorious for their dark humor, were too tired to carry on a serious conversation. Nurse 1, you could conceivably lose your job. The fingerprints are a national FBI background check. Nurse 2, if they find out about the out-of-state bank robbery in the 80s, I might be working the drive-through window at the fast food restaurant. Nurse 1 said, but I don't think you'd get the window, and I sure wouldn't hire you. Nurse 2 is laughing. So for at least a few nurses, the more stringent checks won't be a laughing matter. HB 975 expands the list of disqualifying offenses from 52 to 60 total criminal offenses, including certain felonies and misdemeanors related to fraud, violence, or abuse. If a disqualifying offense is found, it may render the licensee ineligible for employment unless he or she receives an exemption from DOH. Before July 1st, nurses were basically on an honor system after initial licensure fingerprinting, expected to self-report convictions to DOH. Did they self-report? Maybe, maybe not. The new policies should help hold those with, quote, dirty fingerprints accountable. So we'll see what happens as it goes forward. But I want to know, nurses, if you're listening out there, let me know, what do you think about this? Because on the one hand, because what I do for a living in the place where I work, and children are involved, I have to be fingerprinted. And when I worked at the VA, I had to be fingerprinted and say the oaths and all that kind of stuff. So in a way, I don't think this necessarily is that cumbersome. You just go get your fingerprints done, you have it sent to wherever it needs to go. Because I've had to do that for our state, again, because of DCS. So my question is to you, would it be a problem? Now I'm wondering if it's just nurses, or does this include nursing assistants, home health aides? So then a lot of questions come up for me for this. And then who's footing the cost for this? Like, is it the agency, the employer that has to pay for this, or does the individual nurse have to pay for it? Is it something that's rolled into their application fee for licensure? So I have a lot of questions. So if you're in Florida and you know about this, hey, chime in, let me know. Anyway, it says it should be noted that in comparing DOH screening policies with most other healthcare workers, the nursing profession has been much more scrutinized. Surprisingly enough, before July 1st, the majority of healthcare professionals licensed by DOH were not required to undergo fingerprinting as part of their initial licensure. Among the professions not previously required to undergo background screening fingerprinting, but will now be to do so under the new law, are pharmacists, respiratory therapists, occupational therapists, optometrists, dentists, and mental health professionals. And I have to say, again, because of the work with DCS as a mental health professional, I had to do it, so it didn't bother me. But then it goes on to say that there's fingerprints that DOH are retained for 5 years. It's possible a healthcare provider may not need new fingerprints if they were previously retained and are available. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen. There's also some things that possibly CNAs might be involved in this as well, but that's going to put a big damper on a lot of things, because you think about this. CNAs oftentimes don't get paid a lot. So we'll see what it says. They're going to say it's in the beginning stages. Some providers will lose their jobs, but the new legislation will ensure the integrity of the healthcare workplace and enhance patient safety. But my question is, how do you get an exemption from the DOH? So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on that, see if there's any additional questions that may be answered from that. But if you have any insight in that and you're from Florida, let me know. I greatly would like to know what's happening there, because, sometimes they may implement that in other parts of the country. Again, for me, not a problem, because I've had to have those types of clearances before. But for some people, that may pose a problem, particularly what happens if you maybe had done a diversion program where maybe you had a substance abuse issue and then you've completed your program. Do any of those things fall off? If you get those things expunged, can you get that expunged? So here's the thing. So what I found out from one of my attorney friends is that, at least in Indiana, if you have something on your record that you can get expunged, and you're a nurse, you get it expunged from your record from everybody else, but the Board of Nursing still has access to that information, is my understanding. And so it may get off the record everywhere else, but it will stand in the Board of Nursing, and that is concerning to me. That is concerning to me, because to me, an expungement would be an expungement everywhere. And so how is it fair then for the Board of Nursing to continue to hold those things over someone's head, especially if they're many years away from that offense? They did something like when they were 18, or maybe something when they were, a teenager, and now, they're 30, 40 years old and they decide to enter the nursing field. And they have to explain to nurse, and then it depends on what, again, the type of offense, but like a minor offense, you got a DUI when you're 18, you should not have to enter a diversion program if you haven't had a drink in 20 years. So I have concerns about things like that, that weighs on. So we'll see what happens. But if you have any insight in any of that, just let me know. All right, let's get to our next story. As we are talking about things in the workplace for nursing. This is from nurse.org, and you guys know I love nurse.org. They do great reporting over there. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Love some of their stories. So this says, forced to work through lunch, 786 nurses demand $575,000 settlement over unpaid breaks. Okay, so this is coming out of, I believe it's Minnesota. Okay, so here we go. So a total of 786 individuals opted in to join the lawsuit after notice. So in August of 2023, the court certified a collective of all non-exempt nurses who were subject to an automatic meal period deduction while working for Monarch Healthcare Management LLC in the U.S. between August 5th to 2018 and February 14th of 2022. So here's what's going on. So Monarch Healthcare Management had agreed to pay the money in a settlement. So the collective includes nurses, again, who work through their meal breaks. And so they would automatically take the meal out. And so they just lost the time, right? So lead plaintiff April Quay filed lawsuit in August 2021, alleging Monarch violated federal, state, and wage laws by automatically deducting 30-minute meal breaks from time records, even when nurses were unable to take an uninterrupted break due to patient care responsibilities. Monarch denies the allegations and maintains to comply with all wage laws. The proposed settlement would resolve the dispute without further litigation. So, under the terms of the agreement, the gross settlement is $575,000. The service award to lead plaintiff Quay was $5,000. Attorney's fees, $195,000. Litigation costs up to $50,000. And they have to distribute the money within 30 days of court approval. So each participant's payout will be proportional to the number of work weeks during the claim period. The lawsuit claimed nurses were not properly compensated for all hours worked, especially when required to work during unpaid meal periods. Quay alleged that Monarch knew or should have known that nurses were frequently unable to take their full breaks. Monarch disputed those claims, stating that employees were instructed to use a reversal form if they missed a break so they could be paid for the time. Despite the disagreement, both parties agree the settlement is fair and reasonable given the complexity and cost of continuing litigation. If the court approves the settlement, the third-party administrator, ILYM Group, will send settlement checks and tax forms to the nurses who join the case. Each nurse will have 60 days to cash or deposit their check. In exchange for receiving payment, collective members will release any wage-related claims tied to the allegations in the lawsuit. April Quay, the lead plaintiff, has agreed to a broader general release in return for a $5,000 service award. So, that's in Minnesota. If you want to head over there and learn more about that, go to nurse.org and check out some of their articles. Again, they do great work over there. All right, so we're going to do one more, and then we're going to get ready to go to a break. Okay, so this is a big one. I've been following this. We previously reported on this, but it gets even deeper. This is from The Hill. This is talking about the Kansas Board of Nursing. And it says Kansas lawmakers are horrified as more nurses testify against Board of Nursing. In July, a government oversight committee uncovered some issues with the Board of Nursing. Several nurses testified that they had been wrongfully accused of unprofessional conduct. Now, after the committee met again, several more nurses have stepped forward claiming they are struggling to find jobs due to the unprofessional conduct demerit. These nurses say that they were given this label for simple mistakes, such as a computer error while renewing their licenses a few days late. However, they are now struggling to find jobs as Kansas continues to deal with a nursing shortage. One of these nurses, Amy Sipple, testified during Monday's meeting asking the legislature to take action. She says, "Do not let my efforts and the efforts of my colleagues be in vain. We are here at great personal risk because we are trying to represent the next generation of nurses." So there's been a lot going on with this. And there have been calls to defund the board, dissolve it, because again, some of these nursing boards are pretty, I would say they've gone rogue. There's really no accountability for how they do it. Their procedures can sometimes be a little sketchy. And basically, if they don't like you, they'll just take your license. It didn't really have to be a justifiable reason. Sometimes it's they don't like you. So it's really, oof, I feel for them. So it says, usually when we use a term to defund the board or defund the agency, it is to get their attention on a particular item, said Waymaster. I think we've done that. Uh, Carol Moreland, the executive director for the Kansas Board of Nursing, warned lawmakers against any effort to defund the board. The Board of Nursing affects public protection. It affects the nursing workforce in the state of Kansas. I hear all the time about shortages of nursing. Let me tell you, you could make it a whole lot worse. Or you could make it a whole lot better. I'm not in Kansas, so I can't say. But maybe there needs to be a little bit more accountability because due process sometimes is not in some of these board proceedings. And I'm just speaking generally. I'm not talking about any particular board or anything like that I have knowledge, but I have attended a couple of hearings because you're required to attend them as part of your nursing um, education. And I've talked to attorneys who've represented nurses against the board, and I've seen articles about some of these things. And to me, it just seems almost like more mean girl stuff, people picking on people for no, you know what I'm saying? And there are some legitimate reasons for people to have a nursing license removed, as in the Nightingale cases and all those things. But it's really hard when, first of all, you have people that are on the board and they don't meet on a regular basis. A lot of times it's kind of depending on how it's made up. Um, if they have any, professional liability in other places, like they're working somewhere as a nurse and getting the time off. I get it. And a lot of them don't have any legal background. So I know that they have attorneys that work with them, but a lot of them don't have any legal background. So it just makes me wonder. It's like a peer review process basically. And it just kind of makes me wonder how well um, they function, and maybe we need to think about that. How better can we function as a board of nursing? I've sat on peer review disciplinary boards before. I have done that, and it's never fun to have to discuss the practice of a colleague. But if there are clear cases where something needs to be done, something needs to be done. And so it's really a tough situation to be in. But I think in this particular case, according to the reporting, it seems very arbitrary. There we go. So it says lawmakers have expressed interest in other solutions, such as establishing a grace period for nurses who may have forgotten to renew their license, which I think is reasonable. Additionally, Waymaster has experienced interest in a constitutional amendment, which would give the Kansas legislature oversight over the rules and regulations of the board. That it can also be kind of is sticky because now that it makes it political. I don't know if I want it to be political. It says, I believe we could go back and rewrite the rules and regulations that were put in place in 1982 by the Board of Nursing and say, no, you're not going to classify a license being lapsed as unprofessional conduct, which doesn't make sense. I mean, on the one hand, yes, you should be responsible for renewing your license on time. In fact, I have to renew my license this month too, for next month. But I don't think it's one of those things where I don't think you should, especially if it's a couple of days late. Why are you punishing people? I think there should be a little bit of a grace period. I don't know. Let me know what you think. We're going to take a break. Let me know what you think. Give me some comments here. All right. Ready to turn your nursing skills into a thriving business? At the Nurse Shark Academy, we give you expert strategies, real startup guidance, and the support to go from employee to empowered entrepreneur. Join us and build the nurse-owned business of your dreams. Start today and join us at the nursesharkacademy.biz. All right, let's get into our next story. So this will be another interesting one. As we're talking about fake nurses and all this kind of stuff, we have another case of a person pretending to be a nurse. All right, so man accused of posing as a nurse arrested after using fake ID to apply for a job. This is NBC News, and it says a Florida man, accused of posing as a nurse was arrested this week after authorities said he used fraudulent identification to apply for a job. Investigators said Joseph Kinney, 55, of Lake Mary, does not have a nursing license in Florida, but tried to obtain a nursing position. The Volusia Sheriff's Office was contacted after a nursing hiring manager became suspicious of Kinney's application. Detectives posing as hiring staff contacted Kinney to set up an interview. He was subsequently arrested on Monday outside of Advent Health, a video shown. And you can head on over to NBC to see that video. What did I do? Kinney asked as deputies placed him in handcuffs. Authorities said Kinney did not apply for a position at Advent Health, and the location was used by deputies for the arrest. The sheriff's office said state law bans people from even attempting or offering to practice a healthcare profession without a license. Kinney was charged with 2 counts of practicing healthcare without a license. His attorney did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Wednesday. An investigation found that Kinney's license was revoked in 2022. So he had been a nurse, but lost it, and that he had been using another person's identity to look for work in Central Florida. The sheriff's office said he used the same fraudulent ID and license to apply to up to 10 to 15 jobs. So he might possibly be charged for every application he submitted. He was hired for 2 positions in Orange and Seminole counties and worked at each location for less than a week. Previously, Kinney held nursing licenses in Alabama, California, Florida, and had been disciplined for diverting drugs from his employer, driving under the influence of drugs, providing false information, and unprofessional conduct. So he was a nurse, he just lost his license, and now he's trying to get in under somebody else's license. So again, I always tell people, be careful with your information out there. Okay, let's get into this next one. This is, again, nurse.org. And it says, why nurse leaders matter, DON turnover linked to nursing home quality declines. As frontline nurses, you know that consistent leadership matters, but what happens when the person responsible for overseeing nursing staff, the director of nursing, leaves? It turns out DON turnover has a significant impact on nursing home quality, with new evidence showing that frequent changes in this vital leadership role led to lower star ratings and reduced consumer satisfaction scores, which I can see because, consistency is important. Making sure, policies are carried out. You've got that turnover in leadership, who's running the ship type thing. And oftentimes administrators are not nurses and don't really always understand the role of the nurse. And so they may have unrealistic expectations. And I have personally witnessed, and I'm not saying this is all administrators, because I worked with some wonderful administrators that were great, and I still work with them. Don't get me wrong. But there are some that have a dismissive tone towards the nurses, and that person didn't last long as an executive director. Of course, that person also, we suspect, had some mental health issues too, but that person didn't last long because you don't want to make an enemy of your nurses. It's not a good idea. But he was very dismissive to nurses. Anyway, it says a recent study published in the Journal of American Medical Directors Association, or JAMA, AMDA, I should say AMDA, which used to be AMDA, but I think they changed their name now, found that the DON turnover is reliably linked to subpar outcomes. Researchers analyzed data from nursing homes across Ohio, merging staffing records, satisfaction surveys, and CMS star ratings to explore how turnover among DONs compared to turnover among nursing home administrators and their impact on care quality. Here are some key findings. 5-star ratings dropped by 2.9% to 11.5% in facilities experiencing DON turnover. Customer satisfaction fell by 0.4% to 1.5 points. While NHA turnover also affected quality, its impact was much diminished once DON turnover was taken into account. In essence, DON turnover had a more pronounced and consistent negative effect on both objective quality metrics and resident and family experience. The DON not only sets the tone for clinical care and compliance, but also drives the day to day culture and communication within the nursing team. Turnover in this position leads to instability and impacts residents' care by, as I said before, decreasing staff engagement and the consistency of protocols, disrupting resident and staff relationships, leading to lower satisfaction, undermining regulatory compliance and increased risk of deficiencies, and creating communication gaps across interdisciplinary teams. These effects are amplified by studies showing that every increase in nursing turnover can result in more regulatory citations, poor health outcomes, and reduced continuity of care. Currently, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, only reports DON turnover as part of overall staff or registered nurse turnover rates. Researchers and advocates urge CMS to make DON turnover a standalone measure, not just a footnote in staffing data, so that nursing homes are held accountable for leadership stability and transparent performance tracking. The key takeaways then for nurses and facilities. For bedside nurses, the study reinforces how leadership change can ripple through the work environment, affecting care delivery and morale. For administrators and policymakers, the push for improved reporting and retention strategies is clear. Stable DON leadership means better outcomes for residents, families, and staff. Facility teams and nurse leaders can advocate for measuring DON turnover explicitly in quality metrics, investing in development, well-being, and retention for DONs, and engaging nursing staff and leadership transitions to preserve team culture. DON turnover isn't just an administrative issue, it's a clinical one. The departure of a DON is linked to measurable declines in quality ratings and resident satisfaction. As nurses, your voice matters. Advocating for leadership stability is an act of advocacy, not just for yourselves, but for every resident entrusted in your care. So I happen to agree with that. I have seen it personally when the DON leaves, there's always this vacuum of leadership unless they have an effective ADON, an assistant DON in place that can kind of help maintain the culture, maintain the satisfaction scores, and do the regular things. But oftentimes they're pulled in several different directions. Next thing you know, they're on the floor, they're behind the cart. They're not able to keep up because that's why they need a DON and an ADON. And I think that we need to look at how we are structuring these things. And I've been a big advocate for providing more leadership training to the DON and ADON. I have seen train wrecks happen because they want to get creative with numbers and just want to make the metrics look good and all of this while they're neglecting some of the basics of nursing practice. And so I encourage better leadership training and giving them the actual choice and responsibility to be a leader and to make sure that they have support to be a good leader. And so I think we're missing some of those key things in those areas. And I just think there needs to be more done to support the director of nursing who's on call 24/7, 365. How about giving them some relief? And I know they're supposed to technically share calls, spread it out. I know how this works with the leadership team, but ultimately we all know that when stuff goes down, it's going to be the nurse that's going to be responsible for it all. So better support would be great for the DON, and maybe you wouldn't have so much turnover. All right, here's our next story. And it says, again, another from nurse.org. And it says, nurse sues ex-hospital director busted for hiding cameras in restrooms at work. Ugh. A disturbing case of privacy violation has emerged at Memorial Hermann Hospital in the Woodlands, where a nurse has filed a lawsuit against Robert Schrader, the facility's former patient care director. The legal action follows the discovery of hidden cameras allegedly installed by Schrader in staff and public restrooms throughout the hospital. Schrader had direct supervision over nurses. According to court documents, Schrader now faces 7 felony charges of invasion of visual recording after hidden cameras were discovered in August of 2025 by a construction team performing routine maintenance work. The cameras have been concealed in restroom ceilings, creating an extensive surveillance system in areas where staff and visitors expected complete privacy. A camera was also found in his office. What in the world? Okay. In the bathroom? Okay, fun story. when I was working at a hospital that I will not name because it's local, obviously. When I was working at this hospital, staff was completely paranoid and really believed that our staff room was bugged. So you would not hold private conversations in that room because we all just thought that management had bugged the room. It was an interesting time working on that unit. Can I say that? And working at the hospital, there was so much fear in the staff of retaliation and everything. And I may have said this on the show before. I know I've said it in in the other show on the podcast, but I it got so bad that when I worked with this particular manager, I refused to do any directive that she told me verbally. I made her write it down and put it in a memo because then she would frequently get amnesia and lie and say she never said that. So I learned that game quickly, and I said, "I'll tell you what. Anything you want me to do that's a deviation from the policy or anything like that, I want you to put that in writing." And some of that stuff stopped. Those games she was playing stopped. She didn't particularly care for me either, because I was a stickler for pulling out that employee handbook. So, needless to say, I this one hit kind of close to home because of that fear that I had in that one position that I had. So it says the nurse plaintiff, identified only as AD in the lawsuit to protect her privacy, regularly used the compromised staff room and now experiencing severe mental anguish, emotional distress, and psychological trauma, believing she was recorded in various states of undress. Her attorney describes the situation as an outrageous breach of trust and a traumatic violation of the victim's privacy, rights, and dignity. This case represents a fundamental violation of the safety and security healthcare workers should expect in their workplace, the nurse's attorney stated. Our client came to work each day to care for patients, never imagining her supervisor would betray her trust in such a profound way. The investigation has uncovered approximately 300 images from the devices, with only 7 individuals identified so far. Perhaps most damning, some recordings reportedly show Schrader himself installing the surveillance equipment, providing direct evidence of his involvement in the privacy breach. Okay, he's going to be a criminal, but he's also going to be like a dumb criminal. So basically, he had his own surveillance cameras on when he was installing additional surveillance cameras. So then now it recorded him installing surveillance cameras. Okay. Memorial Hermann Hospital responded swiftly upon discovery of the breach, immediately terminating Schrader's employment and notifying law enforcement authorities. However, the lawsuit seeks to hold both Schrader and the hospital accountable, raising questions about institutional responsibility and the adequacy of supervision and security protocols. Which kind of makes me wonder, how did he get access to all the employee bathrooms all over the hospital? That's the other thing I want to know. I mean, how did he be able to go into every bathroom, staff bathroom, and get into the ceiling and do this stuff without nobody noticing or questioning? Or it's kind of weird. Anyway, for healthcare facilities nationwide, this case serves as a sobering reminder of the importance of comprehensive security assessments, including regular inspections of private areas like restrooms and changing facilities. It also highlights the need for clear reporting mechanisms when staff members suspect privacy violations or inappropriate behavior from colleagues, regardless of their position in the organizational hierarchy. As the legal proceedings continue, many in the nursing community are watching closely to see how accountability will be established and what precedents might be set for protecting healthcare workers from similar violations in the future. You know what I always say? If you always suspect that they're watching, then you never have to worry about it. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I'm just one of those people that's like, unless it's my own property, I don't necessarily trust that people are doing the right things. Or maybe I'm jaded. I don't know. But I feel for them, and I hopefully the nurses that were affected by this. I mean, and hopefully this will be a good resolution. All right, let's get to our last story. Yes, before we get to our nurse making a difference. All right, this is from McKnight's Long-Term Care News, and it says updated CMS confirms launch of 75 million nursing home staff training fund. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator Mehmet Oz has announced that his agency is moving forward with $75 million in funding to support long-awaited tuition reimbursement and training program for nursing home staff. Okay, 75 million don't seem like a lot to me. I don't know. If you're thinking about across the nation, that's not a lot of money. It sounds like a lot, but that's not a lot of money when you think about all the facilities we have across the nation. But I'm grateful for what little we can get. But the announcement elicited reactions from providers and their advocates as word spread Tuesday. Oz said in a video late Monday that he had sent a letter to all 50 governors notifying them of the funding availability. But again, that's not a lot of money. CMS initially announced a staffing fund in 2023 in advance of proposed federal rule that would have required most nursing homes in the country to hire additional registered nurses and certified nurse aides to meet hourly minimum. The agency is now working to repeal that rule, but the Oz video posted to X Monday indicates the staffing incentive program will live on. No official notice has been posted on the CMS website as of Tuesday. Hardworking nurses and nurses' aides are critical to ensuring residents can get the best care in safe and inviting nursing homes. But the reality is we have a shortage of qualified nursing home staff in every state in America. That has to change starting now. He described the effort as, quote, a great opportunity to take bold action and tackle nursing home staff shortages. Oz also said that money could be used for tuition reimbursement or stipends, or states could use it to streamline training for CNAs. Oz called the coming actions game changers, especially for rural America. He also asked states to bolster the program, here it comes, by investing a portion of their civil monetary penalties collected from nursing home providers previously cited for noncompliance, which will be matched by federal government to double the investment. Some critics previously said CMS could fund a much larger recruitment and incentive program given the significant fines collected and held by states. In December, CMS said it planned to offer tuition remission and other financial incentives to encourage more RNs to work in SNFs or for state survey agencies. It also planned to promote nurse aid training programs. Oz's 90-second video was short on details, including timing of any rollout, and CMS did not reply by Tuesday to Mike Knight's long-term care news request for a copy of his letter to the states. Reaction to the update Tuesday was varied. While it generated buzz about the administration's support for the sector and in genuine investment in caregivers, others bristled at the program's dollar amount. At the National Investment Center for Seniors Housing and Care Fall Conference Tuesday, Direct Supply Vice President of Government Affairs Brian Perry, calls the news great. Holly Harmon, Senior Vice President of Quality, Regulatory, and Clinical Services for the American Healthcare Association, applauded Oz for recognizing the impact of caregiver shortage in U.S. nursing homes. We've been long awaiting the release of this staffing campaign after providing recommendations to enhance the effort when it was announced late last year. This is an encouraging start to what we hope will be an ongoing collaboration between CMS and the profession in meaningful ways to invest in the long-term care workforce. But New Hampshire Health Care Association President and CEO Brendan Williams described the Oz announcement as, quote, reheated leftovers from the prior administration, noting that the spending could amount to about $5,000 per U.S. nursing home, which is what I said. So everybody thinks that it's a big number, but when you look at the number of nursing homes that are out there, it's not going to make a dent in what we need. So Jody Igor, Senior Director of Nursing Home Quality and Health Regulation for Leading Edge, said our organization, quote, is eager to learn the details of the initiative as it progresses. Combined with last week's interim final rule to repeal the staffing requirements, this news is a welcome refocusing on what's paramount to achieving a goal we share with the administration, residents, families, and all stakeholders ensuring quality care. That is investments in supports and solutions to retain, strengthen, and grow the aging services workforce. According to a timeline published last year, CMS had initially planned to select 10 administrators to run the financial incentive portion of the program by spring. It remains unclear whether any grants have actually been awarded. CMS also was set to begin promoting CNA training resources by spring. A related website has not been updated since December, even as providers continue facing frontline staffing shortages in many markets. By this winter, the agency had wanted to allow RNs to begin applying for financial incentives. The agency said in an email to stakeholders in January that those incentives could include up to $40,000 in tuition reimbursement and or $10,000 outright to work for a nursing home. In return, selected nurses would have to work 3 years for a qualifying provider. So we'll see what happens. Um, I'm curious to see how that all pans out. What do you think, guys? Let me know. All right, let's take a moment to think about our nurse making a difference before we get into some announcements. Okay. So this is again nurse.org. I reported on this. Nurse Brianna Vega crowned Miss Rhode Island, USA, and empowers young girls. So for our nurse making a difference, I always like to share their picture so you can see what they look like. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you can see this. So here you go. That is Nurse Brianna Vega, who's the new Miss Rhode Island, USA. And then she's saying she's using her crown to mentor girls and uplift future nurses. Brianna Vega, RN, has officially swapped her stethoscope temporarily for a tiara. The outpatient OBGYN nurse at Brown University Health was recently crowned Miss Rhode Island, USA 2025, a title she's chased since she was 17. It was so surreal, she said. When I was the last girl standing, I looked around, saw my family cheering, and said, "Oh, I think it's actually happening this time." Vega got her start in pageantry as a teen in the Miss Rhode Island teen division, but when it came time to choose her next step, she shifted her focus to nursing school. The decision came from a deeply personal place. As a child, she spent time in hospitals with her father during a difficult diagnosis and treatment process. That's where she saw the powerful role nurses play in patient care. I saw firsthand how impactful and transformative nurses are at the bedside. I knew very early on I wanted a career that fueled the curiosity I have for learning, but also allowed me to lead a career based on kindness and empathy. She earned her bachelor's degree in nursing, becoming the first college graduate and first nurse in her Dominican Puerto Rican family. Years later, the pageant bug returned and she decided to give it another go. Vega completed in the Miss Rhode Island USA pageant in 2021, 2022, and 2023. After taking a 1 year break, she came back and this time won. For Vega, the crown is not a tool. The crown is a tool, not a trophy. Her platform centers on the importance of mentorship and encouraging girls to believe they can achieve anything they set their minds to. Through her work with Big Sisters of Rhode Island, she connects directly with young women and hopes her journey helps others feel seen. I want to highlight to young women that your dreams are always within reach. And I really want to show young women who are pursuing nursing that there's a real need and a want for them. So congratulations to her, to Nurse Vega, for becoming Miss Rhode Island for 2025. I think that was great and a great way to end our show on the news, our news segment. I appreciate all the nurses out there that are doing things and having a platform to share. So as you're watching, let's get into some quick announcements. There are some events that are coming up, and so I want to make sure I get them onto your calendars. So this month we have our Alignable Nurse Business event. So if you're not on Alignable, why not join that social media group? Meet local business owners. But we do have our online event for our nurse business owners, and that will be on September the 17th at 12 noon. We meet for an hour. It's virtual. All you got to do is head on over to sign up. If you want to do that, let me know. I'll be happy to share that information. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that link right here in the chat for you. If you want to sign up and register, here you go. There you go. All right, so that's coming up next week. You can join us for our nurse business owner meet and on Alignable. Secondly, we have coming up the following week. I'm excited about this. The following week on, let me get to it. The 25th September, we have our alignable, local alignable Anderson event. So our alignable alliance in Anderson, we are meeting at Thai Divine at 6:30 for dinner, inviting all local business owners to come out and enjoy dinner with us. Yes, you do have to pay for your own food. I do want to say that because I had some people that were not aware of that when they came. So I want to make that clear. But you can register for that on Alignable as well, and then come out and join us. We're going to have a great time. I look forward to that. Also, we have a couple of training classes that are coming up. So on the 24th, um, we have our CPR renewal class. So if you need to get your CPR renewed, that's a good time to get into that class. So go to Baxter Professional Services Health Education.com, sign up for the CPR renewal class. This is great for nursing students and anybody that's in healthcare field. That's for healthcare providers only, to come to that particular class for renewal as well. And then we have our basic TB validation class will be on October the 1st at 3 o'clock. So you can sign up for that class too, and encouraging you to sign up for that class that's coming up. Now, we have a couple of community things that are coming up. So the Anderson, Madison County Black Chamber of Commerce will be having their events, and I'll give you more as we get closer to it. But we will have tickets available for the annual banquet, which is coming up. And that banquet is, I believe, on the 19th. Yes, it's October 19th. So if you would like to sign up for that event and you want a ticket, you can see me. I can get you tickets to that as well. So, yeah, that event is coming up on October the 19th at 4 o'clock p.m. You do need a ticket to get in. It will be at Love Events. So it has moved. It traditionally happened in Hoosier Park. We are now moving to Love Events. And so the goal of the Anderson Madison County Black Chamber of Commerce is celebrating their 19th annual banquet. And again, our goal is to give minority owned business the tools to grow with access to education, connections, contracts, and capital. So that's our mission. Join us for that event. Again, the tickets are $40, and you can get a hold of me to get a ticket. All right. I think that's it. There'll be more events coming up in the community. They haven't sent it to me yet. So I know that we'll be having more events coming up for the Black Chamber. If you have a local event and you want to share your local event here and post it, let me know. I'd be happy to do that with you. We can post that as well. All right. Well, that's it for me. I want to thank you for tuning in this week. Don't forget to like and share this content. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe and let us know what your thoughts are. And if you have any news, tips, or stories you want me to follow up on, let me know and give me a link, and I'll be happy to take a look before we put them on the show. All right. That's it for now. Thank you, and you have a great rest of your week. And don't forget to look at our other show, the Nurse Shark Academy Show, where I interview nurse business owners and leaders and get them to tell their story. We just had our latest episode drop on the Nurse Shark Academy Show, where we had a nurse talk about his journey. And it's very exciting. It's very exciting. I love talking with people and finding out what they do. So head on over to the nursesharkacademy.biz. You can get our podcast. You can sign up for any of our trainings, watch our videos. They're all there on our website, the nursesharkacademy.biz. See you later. Bye-bye for now.